Okay, object in motion stays in motion unless acted on by a force. Okay, what's number 2? Mass times acceleration. The force of an object is equal to its mass times its acceleration. Okay? Good Lord, come on already. You were already on this morning. It can't be that cold.
It's right there.
Okay. All right, so law number 3. This is the one that you probably recognize because we tend to use this idea in everyday language. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Okay. So if I push on something, it pushes back on me. Okay. So when I'm walking, we talked briefly about this last week. When I'm walking, bearing in mind law number 1, in order for me to move, there has to be an external force. So when I'm walking, what are the forces that are occurring? What's the external force that's making me move? Ground reaction force, right? So I am pushing down and back, and the floor is pushing up and forward. Right? Otherwise I don't move. There has to be an external force to make me move. Okay? So when we look at very young children who are just beginning to walk, their walking looks very bobby because most of their push is straight down. Right? So they look like this rather than moving forwards because they don't initially push back, they only push down. Okay? So they don't take very big steps, it takes them a long time to move forwards. Does that make sense? If you think about walking on the sand, okay? Why do I get footprints when I walk on the sand? What's happening given this? I'm pushing down and back. Why is there a footprint? There's no footprint here. Right? No footprint. Why is there a footprint on the sand? Right? So when I walk, I push down and back. The floor pushes up and forwards. Why do I get a footprint when I walk in the sand?
You said tension.
Say that, but I ain't say nothing.
All right. So when I walk in the sand, right, the sand isn't able, right, when I walk on a hard surface like this, the ground reaction force is equal to the amount of force I apply. Right? When I walk in the sand, I push down and back. The sand isn't able to apply an equal and opposite. So it pushes like that, and I've got that much deficit. So I sink into the surface. I can't walk on water at all because the ability of water to apply force is non-existent, right? The surface tension of the water can't manage with a person's weight and force that they're applying. Can manage with a bird. Certain birds can walk on water, but humans can't. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, I'm going to try one more time to flip into the video. See if we can get this to work. All right. We talked about the jumping one last week, so I'm not going to show the jumping one, but I just want to show the running one to give that idea. No, that's all right. Right, so you can almost see him pushing backwards with his back leg. Does that make sense? Right, if I want to run, not walk, the force I have to apply to the floor has to be greater than the force I applied in order to walk. So I have to be stronger. Okay? So remember, this might seem very obvious. When you think about it, you're like, oh yeah, of course. But you've got to understand your why. Right? You'll be a way better teacher and a way better coach if you understand the why. Because this is a very simple example. We all know sport can get very complicated. And so you're going to get faced with a problem, a movement problem that needs solving, and you can't solve if you don't have the tools for solving. Okay, so if I have to exert force in order to have a force back, okay, then mechanically I want to exert that force in the plane of motion that I want to move in. All right? So I don't want to waste force, applying force outside. If I want to move forwards, I want all the force to be in this plane. Okay. If I want to throw a ball, I don't want an arm swing that's out here, right? I want the arm swing in the plane. That's why we have to work on range of motion in our shoulders. We want to be a good thrower, a good pitcher. We want to avoid then any rotational movements around the plane. We want everything as much as we can in the plane of action. So for example, if I'm coaching sprinting, right, and I have a runner who runs like this, right? Then this applied force is going in the wrong plane because I want to go forwards, not sideways. Right? So I need to change their arm action so that this additional force production is being applied in the right plane of motion to aid the sprint. Now, if I'm coaching a marathon runner, maybe if they run with their arms a little bit side to side, perhaps it's a little less important because speed isn't the goal, right? Duration is the goal. So they can get away with a little bit of wasted force production until they're sprinting for the line, if they have to sprint for the line. Does that make sense? So how I coach running depends on A, the goal of running, okay, and B, what I understand the mechanics of the skill to be. Okay. It's the same as if you watch someone from the back when they're running and they've got that really wide heel circle, right? It's because they're pushing to the side, right? That's a complete waste of energy. And it's very inefficient, right? So I would have to spend a lot of time working on getting them to push straight back rather than getting them to push off kilter, if they can. Sometimes they're internal mechanics, so the hip joint and the femur and the knee joint might not allow for them to push straight back. Right? Girls with wider hips tend to have more heel swing than girls with narrow hips. Because unless I'm going to run like that, right, I can't, my push has some angle to it because of the angle of the femur coming into the knee. Questions? Okay. All right. So, when I'm running, my leg is moving through the arc of part of the circle, yes? My arms are moving through an arc of the circle. If I am throwing, I have a circle, all right? So kicking, throwing, running, any activity like that has a lot of rotational movement in it. And so if I can increase the velocity, then I can increase the force. Okay? So if I'm holding onto a rope that has an object at the end, right? And I'm swinging it around or I'm turning around and I let go, who remembers what happens to the object from physics or math? Right? So if I'm doing this and I let go, what happens? Anybody remember?
It stops.
No. You just apply the power force. Keeps going where? Does it keep going in a circle? Oh yeah, right, it goes off at a tangent. So somewhere in maths or physics they taught you that, right? If I'm rotating an object and I release, it will fly along the tangent to the point of the circle where I released it. Okay? So if I want to increase the velocity, because when we look at this, linear velocity is equal to rotational velocity times, and I do it like that radius of the circle. So, Given that in sport, very often what we want is the projectile to move very quickly with a lot of force, so it gets a lot of distance. Is that right? Right? I don't play ball games. You guys have to. Is that right? That's the goal. I want the thing I'm throwing or kicking to move as hard and fast as I can. Often, not always, because sometimes what I need is a little bit of finesse, but often what I want is hard and fast. Right? So, if linear velocity equals rotational velocity, then I've got to swing faster. Well, that goes back a little bit to what we were saying last week about being stronger on the day. Right? On the day, I can't get stronger. So can I really swing it faster if I'm already trying as hard as I can? Possibly not. That might take some time because I have to get stronger first. And that takes time. Make sense? But radius of rotation this we can play with. Right? So when I serve, if I hit the ball with my arm bent, I can't generate as much force as if I hit and reach up. And this is as long as it can be, because the center of rotation is my shoulder, right? So I toss, I reach. Some people, when you watch, actually jump, right? How much radius can I create as I hit the ball? Watch a baseball pitcher. Here, here, here. As they release the ball, arm is straight. Soccer. Right? Here, 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 here. As they make contact with the ball, the leg is straight, not bent. If it's bent, it's not efficient. Right? So timing, coordination, all start to play a role within these types of skills. Right? That's something that has to be learned over time. If you watch beginners, they often throw with their arms bent. They kick with their legs bent. Right? They may even run with their legs bent. They might not ever really push through on the run. Okay? So you want to start, you should have some pictures hopefully going in your brain now. Right? Start watching people and looking for these things. Okay? So fully extend as much as I can at the point of release or contact. Okay. So if having a longer moment arm gives me more linear velocity, and you can look at those two videos, these two videos are really good examples of this idea. Okay. Really, I want to talk more about force absorption here. Actually, let's go back one, just quickly. If having a longer extension gives me more linear velocity, why don't we see that even in elite performers? Right? An elite baseball player does not swing the ball back with a straight arm and release it with a straight, right? This is not what you see. Is it? No. Right? What you see is, yeah? Same with an elite soccer player. You don't see them swing their legs straight, right, to kick the ball. And the reason why is because of that idea of inertia. That inertia is inertia is related to the mass of the object, right? The heavier the mass, the harder it is. Inertia is the resistance to movement. Okay? So the heavier, the more mass an object has, the more difficult it is to move it. Well, when we look at rotation, rotational inertia is based on the mass, but also on this radius of rotation. So when I've got the extension, I've increased the inertia. If I increase the inertia, I increase the amount of energy I have to use to move the object, i.e. my arm and the ball. That's not efficient. We want to conserve energy. So mechanically, I want to reduce inertia, reduce, and then extend right at the point of release to get the most linear velocity, but without using the most amount of energy to create it. And that's why we see a bent leg and an extension at the kick, a bent arm and an extension at release. Okay? Okay, here I want to talk about absorption. We've already, if I want to move an object, I have to apply force. So I'm more interested in how do we stop the object now? How do I absorb force in order to stop an object? So there's a couple of ways I can absorb force. So to make an object stop, often what I'm doing is decreasing the impact force. Okay? So one of the ways is to increase the time over which the given force is applied. So it's back to front of what we talked about last week, where we said we want to take the biggest step possible to apply force for the longest time possible to get the most amount of acceleration on the ball. Right? When we want to stop, I have to apply force over time to absorb the impact. Right? So in gymnastics, they have soft flooring, so it gives some, so that adds time, right? B, as they land, we see lots of ankle and knee and hip closure to absorb, to add more time. So everybody stand up. Okay, do not jump very high. Do this gently because we don't need anyone getting hurt. Right? I want you to jump and land without bending your knees or your ankles or your hips. Just a teeny, teeny, tiny one. Ready? Right? Your heart kind of goes, you feel your brain kind of bang up against the top of your skull, right? Because all that force travels all the way up through your skeleton, through your spine, into your skull. Right? But if I jump and I bend, doesn't hurt at all, right? Because I increase the amount of time that I have to absorb that force from the floor. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. What do you tell someone who's learning to catch?
Did you repeat that?
What do I tell someone who's learning to catch? Okay.
Keep
Keep
your
my
eyes on
hands
the
out in front.
object.
Keep my eyes on the object. The ball hits my hand, it bounces out, it lands on the floor. Grab it.
Yeah.
What else? Bring the ball to your chest or to your stomach. Grab, pull it in. Isn't that what we do? Grab, pull it in. We have to pull it in because if I do that, it bounces straight out because that's like jumping and landing with straight legs. Right? If I'm going to absorb the impact, I have to increase the amount of time over which the force is hitting my hands. There's a reason for everything. Just got to put all the pieces of the pie together. The other thing you can do, so I said there were two. The first thing you can do is increase the time over which the force is applied. The other thing you can do is increase, in certain sports, increase the area over which the impact occurs. So, I've never done judo, but apparently when you are thrown in judo, you're told to slap the floor, get your arms out, right? Because you want as big a surface area as possible to hit the floor. Because that doesn't hurt as much as hitting the floor tucked up, apparently. I'd rather not be thrown at all, so I never did that game. But, right? So increase the time over which the force is applied, or increase the surface area over which the force is applied. I have to go back to gymnastics because this is what I know. There used to be a really big deduction for not landing on your feet together and not stepping. Now when you watch the girls, often what they do is land with their feet apart and pull their heels together. So they don't take a step, but this increases the surface area over which the force is applied. How many times do injuries occur on the basketball court when you land on one foot rather than land on 2 feet? Right? How many times do those knees go? Landed on 1 foot. Right? Okay, last concept then. So we've got our 3 laws and how to use them. Last concept we want to look at as a foundation is stability and balance. All right? Principles of stability are very important in sport. I don't want to be falling all over the place, right? I want to be under control. So, stability is kind of like inertia, right? It's the ability to resist movement. The ability to resist a disruption to my movement, particularly my balance, right? Balance is the ability to maintain equilibrium, to maintain where I'm at, homeostasis. So in sport then, often what we end up coaching is a stability-mobility trade-off. Right? Because I might want to have the most effective pitch. Okay? But that means I have to take a great big long step, which means I have to stand on one leg for a very, very, very long time. Maybe my athlete isn't strong enough to stand on one leg for a very long time, or mobile enough in the hip joints. So I have to trade off here. We do it when we walk, we do it when we run. Right? If you watch your grandparents over the next 10 years, they'll go from walking like this to walking a little bit wider. Right? Because this is more stable. They'll get slower. That's okay. They're going to get where they're going. I don't want to fall over. Right? I don't want to walk like this, because to walk like this is risky. Makes me very unstable. The older I get, the more important it becomes to stay stable, because falling has massively negative consequences as I get older. Okay? So how do I increase stability and increase balance then, if they're so important? So increasing stability, you've all seen it, especially the football players. Right? What do I have to do? Right? Yeah. Get lower. Get lower. Have your feet wider. Increase the base of support. Drop the center of gravity closer to the floor. If the skill I'm teaching doesn't want stability, I want the center of gravity as high as I can, and I want the base of support as small as possible. Depends on the skill. To increase balance, first thing I have to do is increase stability. So I have to be able to do this. To do this, I have to be stronger. I have to understand the coordination pattern. And I need to understand the proprioceptive feedback that I'm receiving from my knees, from my ankles, from my hips, from the base of my feet. All right, so we're in the weight room. Okay. To maintain balance, my center of gravity that we talked about on Friday, right, that abstract center of gravity has to be over the base of support. Does not have to be in the middle of the base of support. All right? So, here's my base of support. I'm gonna, right? How many times when we do this, do we tip forward and fall out of it before we get the second part of it? Part of the skill, right, is getting the first part on balance so that you can do the second part. Okay? The LV tells you all the time, get your ass down. Right? You can't do this with your bum up in there. It's got to be down. Otherwise you're going over. Right? So I've got some wiggle room here. For where my center of gravity needs to be. Right? So, if I've got my feet wide, my center of gravity is here. I can lean, 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 and now I fall. Right? I can lean all the way to the edge can move my center of gravity and remain on balance. If I've got a very small base, it's really difficult to stay on balance. Right? I've got to be super strong. So stability ends up being a measure of how well we can maintain balance when it's disturbed. All right? If I push you around, okay? Same with your feet together. Right?
No.
It's easy, right? Easy to push her off balance. Now have your feet apart. Right? Now have your feet apart and split. Now I can't get her, right? I have to push really hard to get her off balance now. Thank you. Makes sense? So it's all stuff you know. You know this. You do it every day when you're training. And come back, it's the why are you doing it? What's the reason it works? Or doesn't work sometimes, right? Oh, I'm not getting used to clicking this. Okay, let's turn the light up so you can see these pictures properly. Oh, thank you.
Go above.
No, just the left one. So, skill that is highly stable. Right? Of course, I pick a handstand. But you can put in any skill here that you do in your sport. For it to be highly stable, which makes it easy-ish, assuming you're not a beginner, right? Then I have to have a wide base of support, and because her legs are split and bent, that drops her center of gravity down. So she's lowered her center of gravity, she's got her hands wider than her shoulders. This is very stable. On the other end of the continuum, if I want it to be difficult, or if it's a skill that's difficult, it's got low stability because the base of support is very, very small, right? One hand, and her center of gravity is higher from the base of support because she's straight and long and narrow. Okay, so this is narrow base of support, low stability, difficult. Wide base of support, high stability makes the skill easier. So sometimes when we're working with people who are inexperienced at moving, what we have to do is trade off how quickly or how much force I want and create more stability in the skill while they learn how to do the skill. And then make it smaller and smaller and smaller and more difficult as they get more skill. Okay, on page 44, there is a nice step-by-step use of the idea of motion stability for correcting error in a skill. So they have 5 steps there. Make sure you take a look at those. Because they're And again, as you're reading them, you'll go, oh yeah, coach does that all the time. Right? But then you'll get the reason behind using that particular cue. Right? Which error do I correct? There's always error. Depending on how skilled the individual is, there might be piles of errors, or there might just be a couple of errors. Which one do I correct first? Okay. All right, so look at that, and then there's a couple of articles, again, they're practitioner, really easy to read. One is Biomechanical Concepts for the Physical Educator, and the other one is Applying Newton's Apple in Physical Education, but in movement. Right, so they're both applied using this information and showing how you use it when you're teaching. All right? On Friday, we're going to play games. Yes. Because we need a break from all the thinking. Okay?